to the Steps to Happiness show on Soulivity TV. I'm your host, Teresa Greco, happiness coach, author, editor, writer, educator, and Reiki master. Are you ready to feel the love, peace, and happiness that exists within you? Then the Steps to Happiness show is for you. On my show, my guests and I explore the latest physical, mental, emotional, and spiritual well-being practices that can help you to realign with the happiness within you. On today's show, we'll be discussing the topic of trauma and the ways we can overcome it to live happier lives. No one person is immune from trauma. We've all had something happen in our lives that left an emotional scar. The effects of traumatic events such as abuse, neglect, a serious accident, being the victim of violence, living through a natural disaster or war, or sudden expected loss are emotionally challenging at any age, whether they're a one-time occurrence or a long-term chronic pattern. Many of us carry emotional baggage, a term you've probably heard before, around with us. It's a term that's occasionally used to explain the phenomena of carrying prior trauma or negative experiences into one's life, both personally or professionally. It can affect the way you think about yourself, how you react to stress, your physical well-being, and your relationships with others. It's important that we acknowledge the trauma rather than trying to hide it under the rug or putting it into the closet. This emotional baggage is showing up in different areas of your life, whether or not you're making the connection to the heartache, disappointments, and dis-ease that might be showing up in the physical body. In order for us to be in alignment with the love, peace, and happiness that we are, we need to acknowledge the blocks that are preventing us from feeling that love for ourselves and the joy in our lives. We need to go into the darkness and use our innate light to dispel what's holding us back from being who we really are and having the life we really want to lead. We're going to take a quick break and I'll introduce my first guest on today's show.
Have you ever asked the question, if I was to be anything, what would I be? Regardless of money, regardless of status, beyond popularity and fame. Living your passion, feeling your life has purpose. Soulivity is a space to nurture that which lives in all of us. A place where work can become play, and doing what we love creates the dreams of a lifetime.
Welcome back. I'd like to introduce my guest for the show. He's the founder of Think Unbroken, a best-selling author, award-winning speaker, podcast host, coach, and advocate for adult survivors of childhood trauma. Michael Unbroken, hello and welcome to the show.
Well, my friend, it's a pleasure to be here with you today.
Now, Michael, if you could please share your story with us that eventually led you to do the work that you're doing now with your clients, please.
Sure. And I'll of course give you the elevator pitch version of that, as well as just a little disclaimer. I think it's incredibly important that people do not compare their stories to my story or to anyone else's, because we all have a different experience. And mine was pretty dark. So when I was just 4 years old, my mother, who was a drug addict and alcoholic, actually cut off my right index finger. Now, that's context. That's where we begin this journey. My stepfather, super abusive, the kind of guy you pray is never your stepfather. And we spent the majority of my childhood deeply impoverished and even homeless. In fact, I lived with over 30 different families from the time that I was 8 to 12 years old. By the time that I was 12, I was getting high, taking drugs. By 13, drinking every day. And by 15, I was expelled from school for selling drugs. And, I was breaking into houses, stealing cars, running from the cops, getting shot at, like really crazy movie kind of stuff, right? But this was my real life. And eventually I get accepted into a last chance program. I still do not graduate high school on time. And in fact, in summer school, after all of my friends got to graduate, the summer school teacher basically looks at me and goes, "Here's your diploma. We're done with you. Good luck with the rest of your life." And I was trying to figure out, like, how do you navigate trauma, abuse, homelessness, poverty, being bullied, being picked on, having a learning disability, all of the things that come along with childhood trauma. And I thought, it must be money. I'm going to go chase money. That'll be the solution. That'll change my life forever. Lo and behold, as many people do come to find, I did discover that money does not actually change your life or make it better. And in fact, by the time that I was 26, I was 350 pounds, smoking 2 packs a day, drinking myself to sleep. I was high from the moment I woke up till the moment I went to bed, and my life was an utter disaster. And in this rock bottom moment, like literally the worst day of my life, I'm laying in bed, it's 11 in the morning. Keep in mind, I'm 350 pounds at this point. I'm smoking a joint, eating chocolate cake, and watching the CrossFit games, like the ultimate rock bottom. And I pulled myself up off the bed that day, and I looked at myself in the bathroom mirror. And I remembered being 8 years old, and the water company had come and turned our water off. And I grew up in Indianapolis. I grew up in America in a major city, and we were so impoverished they would literally turn our water off, our heat, our electricity. We would get evicted all the time. And this particular day, I took this little blue bucket, walked across the street to our neighbor's house, and for the first time I stole water. And I remember being like, well, when I'm a grown up, this won't be my life. And so at 26 years old, while it wasn't my life in so many ways, I was still that hurt, lost little boy. And as I looked in the mirror, I asked myself, what are you willing to do to have the life that you want to have? Ultimately, the answer was no excuses, just results. And 12 years later, here I am talking to you.
Wow. Thank you so much for sharing that with us. That is a lot. And in the introduction, I said that we all have some form of trauma that has affected us at some point in our life and how we experience that. So I appreciate your disclaimer, as you said, because how we internalize the things that happen to us can be different for all of us. But what you went through is definitely a lot. Now, I believe that we're spiritual beings having a human experience, which means ultimately that our essential self is always whole, healed, and complete. And that while things around us may have happened to our physical, mental, and emotional self, and we feel broken, the true essence of who we really are is untouched and can never be broken. And, which is why even your name and your brand really spoke to me, because I believe that none of us are broken. And as I said, the true essence of us can never be broken. And so that spirit part of us can be a place that we go to help us remember who we are and to help us to get through those difficult times in our life when we feel as if we are broken. And so I noticed, from your website and the work that you're doing in your book and everything is really helping people to become the heroes of their own story by remembering the truth of who they really are. And so in that moment, that crossroad, when you were 26, I believe you said, that you had kind of like that awakening for yourself, or that moment of enlightenment, maybe. I don't know what you're calling it, but what did you realize about yourself in that moment that now your name is Unbroken?
Yeah, I think that A lot of things come to mind from not just that moment, but moments leading up to it. I don't think, and this is just my personal opinion, I don't think anyone just kind of hits a rock bottom. I think there's this magnitude of different things that happen over time that lead you down that place. And I remember a quote from Stoicism that really calls to me when people ask me this question. And it says, Man who lives with courage dies once, and a coward dies 1,000 deaths. And I was living this very cowardly life to a lot of an extent, right? Because I was living exactly what everyone had always told me I was going to be. You're not good enough. You're not strong enough. You're not capable enough. You're a loser. You're stupid. You're fat. You're dumb. You're never going to amount to anything. This is why your family doesn't love you. This is why you're homeless. Like all of those things, right? Think about all that in your head. And in that moment, what happened was I just realized like I was living into everything everyone told me I would be. I was terrified of myself. I was terrified of the idea that I could have success, that I could have abundance, that I could have wealth, that I could have love, compassion, hope, joy, fulfillment. Because if you've never experienced those things before, how could you know that you're capable of having them? And in that moment, what really struck me probably the hardest was recognizing that where I was right then was my fault. Now, I don't believe
Mm.
that we're capable for any of the bad things that happen to us. Like this finger I walk around with, 5 surgeries, skin grafts, discolored, missing half of it. Like I'm not responsible for that or the cuts or the burns, right? But what I am responsible for is every decision that I make from this moment forward. And that's what really happened in that moment was recognizing, oh, wait a second. I've never lived into my capability before because I've been so brainwashed, enmeshed, and groomed into the negativity of other people's limiting beliefs while understanding, and this took me a while, that hurt people. And sitting into the recognition, like, wait a second, this is a cycle. Imagine how my parents' parents were and their parents' parents and so on as we go down this timeline. And in that, really what came of this concept of no excuses, just results, it simply meant I'm not going to negotiate with myself anymore. I'm not going to put myself down. I'm not going to belittle myself. And honestly, like the next 4 years of my life were the hardest 4 years of my life because it was like one step forward and a million steps backwards. Right. But the one thing that I decided was no matter what, just keep going forward. And I believed that on a long enough timeline, my life could be very, very different. And I never tried to seek better because I don't know how to measure better. Like I can't put that on a table and go, that's better than that. But I could look at different. And it really came down to me being like, okay, what did I do yesterday? Well, yesterday I smoked 2 packs of cigarettes. I drank a fifth of Jack Daniels. I got in my car when I probably shouldn't have. I lied to people. I hurt people. I hurt myself, most importantly. What can I do differently today? And I recognize if I just do one thing differently every single day, well, over the course of a year, that's 365 different actions that you take to having a different life. And if you take 365 different actions, I promise you, your life is not going to look the same as it does today. And that's kind of what it was. I sat in the truth and I said to myself, you have allowed other people to take your power and you have to take it back. And that's a really hard reality for people to step into because so much of childhood trauma and abuse is the theft of identity. It gets taken from us. Who we are gets stolen. And to take that back is terrifying because you never knew you were allowed to begin with.
Mhm. Do you think it was, that, so I call it their spiritual self, but that gut instinct, that intuition, that little voice inside of you in that moment that said that you weren't any of those things, that you were living any of the things that were said to you, that the life that you had, that there was something inside of you that told you that you could make a change. There was some kind, like I believe it's that light and love inside of us that is always there and can never be extinguished, that you in you tapped into, and you used that light of like hope to bring you that energy and that that willingness to every day to take the little steps that you did. What do you think? Do you think it was that little voice?
I believe that if I really retrace my life in a linear fashion to as far back as I can remember, which is actually pretty young, I always felt like I was supposed to do something incredible with my life. Right? There's always an energy that I felt about myself, not only in terms of problem solving, but being able to kind of like manipulate the universe, for a lack of a better way to phrase it, to make some really amazing things happen. And that is even held true to today. And what I really came into was being like, why don't you just listen to yourself and stop listening to these people who
Mhm.
are trying to pull you down all the time? I think that whether you want to call it light, energy, spirit, like I don't know, whatever it is, right? I'm not a doctor, okay? But I think whatever that thing is, like it sits inside of us, right? And you have a decision to make. You can listen to that and face the fear of the unknown of becoming the person that you're destined to be, or which was the direction that I was heading for most of my life, or you can move towards regret because that's where you're going to land. Realize that if I just sit and I move towards who I think I can be, and I'm willing to fail along the way and hold that, say, I don't know that necessarily I'm definitely not religious. I don't know that I necessarily believe in God, but I do believe in the fact that we have the ability to control the narrative of the destiny that we go into. Right. And I think that a lot of that is calling into the universe, right? And saying, I believe that I can have this, while simultaneously putting in a lot of effort to move there. Because I don't know about you, but I've never manifested anything in my life without tremendous amount of action. And so it was very simply, I just sat and I said, what is it that I want? Now, Think Unbroken was never in the cards. Like you go rewind a decade ago, 11 years ago, I never thought this would be the path that what I would be on. And then it really just struck me one day. I was thinking to myself, this suffering, it serves a purpose. And we have the ability to turn our trauma into triumph. And when I really sat in that, I thought to myself, what if I could just help other people? Because I've seen the worst of humanity, but I've also seen the best of it. And I've seen the best and worst of myself. And I believe that we all have the inherent ability to be able to step into greatness and to be successful and have an abundance. All those things as defined by you. Please don't compare whatever you think that means to what I think that means. And for each of us to be able to step into that, like that is where you find self love and courage, compassion, that's also where you build confidence because the more that you step into trusting, knowing, and loving yourself, the more that really what I believe happens is you allow that light to shine. You allow that part of you to become self actualized and realized. And I hear people, this is the first thing I teach people when I coach them. You hear people all the time who come from traumatic backgrounds, they go, well, I thrive in chaos. And I think to myself,
Mhm.
that seems awfully dumb. Wouldn't you rather thrive in joy and abundance, love, compassion, hope, fulfillment? And if we can change that narrative and help people recognize they thrive in chaos because that's all they know, and knowing peace is terrifying, but you can know peace if you're willing to honor that part of you that says you're allowed to be great. Like it's amazing what happens to people.
Mhm. And it's amazing when we tap into the love, peace, and happiness that already exists within us by letting go of those narratives, of those stories, that programming, that conditioning, the whole belief system that we operate by that has taken us away from understanding that we are love, peace, and happiness. And I understand that you're really helping people to get over their trauma or overcome the trauma, and heal themselves by tapping into the love inside of them. Do you think that that is the way that we need to get there, is by loving ourselves in all aspects of our life? Like how is that the big missing piece, is connecting to that love?
Well, it's a part of it, right? I mean, you go look at life, and love is something that most people have a really difficult time understanding, because how do you know love if the very people who are supposed to protect you and care for you are the very people who hurt you the most? So the narrative that you have for love is very skewed until you realize, like, wait a second, what if I do the things that I need for me? One thing that so many people, trauma aside, so many people do is they torture themselves the same way that the people who hurt them tortured them. And that word that this idea about letting go that you used is so incredibly true. Like, you have to be willing to get to this place where you don't let those things control you every day. It's not that they're not going to pop up. It's not like you can magically like stuff them under the bed and they'll go away forever. Like, it doesn't work that way. You've got to do the work. But to let go of it, to let go of the pain that it, like, think about this. If I gave you a backpack and it was full of bricks, and you had to carry this backpack with you everywhere you went, and it was hundreds of pounds, and it exhausted you, it interrupted your relationships, it interrupted your self-care, it interrupted your ability to go and have an amazing career, it interrupted every aspect of your life. How long would you carry that backpack? Like, how long would you do that? And that's what people do with trauma. They carry it forever. And one of the greatest forms that you can have of self-love is just simply sitting it down, going, I don't need this today. I don't have to carry this with me. I have the ability to step into this other side if I'm willing to acknowledge that I have to love me first. And sometimes that means making the most hard and difficult decisions you've ever made in your life. At 18 years old, I told my mother, I can never talk to you again. And I promise you, if I would not have made that boundary, I would not be here with you. Right. And I look at so many of the hard decisions that we make that get conflated with this idea that, especially right now with so many of the narratives in social media being around narcissism and all these words that are buzzy. It's like the part that we forget is this: the most important thing in life is you have to go look in that mirror and be okay with who you are. And if you're not, you have to address those things. And those things that you address, like, I mean, it could be anything: leaving the relationship, starting the podcast, taking a mental break, getting away from the chaos of life, not drinking, not smoking, or adding things, right? Whatever it is, those are the things that you have to address. And that's self-love. People look at those actions as torturous, and it's like, wait, it can't be torture if you're doing it for the betterment of your life, of your community, of your family, of your friends, of your circle, most importantly of yourself. And so getting into self-love, it's not as simple as like, I'm going to sit down and journal and I'm going to meditate. It's actually showing up in your life every day. And that's what's really difficult, because what's harder than showing up for yourself?
Mhm. And do you think also a big part of the process is forgiveness? That in the loving of yourself, we forgive others, because not because we're essentially forgiving them for the actions that they did that were wrong, but we forgive them so that we can be set free and we can start to let go of those events that really hurt us. And so was forgiveness something that you needed to practice as well?
Yeah, but it starts with you first. You need to forgive yourself first. You need to take the space to, again, coming back to this concept of let go, to stop holding yourself to the fire for things that you did 7, 12, 15, 25 years ago. I think the thing that people really need to hold on to is we are having this human experience. None of us know what we're doing. Like, I don't know what I'm doing. I have no clue. Neither do you, neither does anyone. We are figuring it out every single day as we go. And to destroy yourself constantly for the mistakes you make is so dangerous. Where instead, what you do is you simply acknowledge, wow, I did something maybe out of my moral character, maybe outside of my values. Maybe I've just done the worst thing anyone could ever do on planet Earth ever. But it was 25 years ago, it was 50 years ago, right? Maybe it was even yesterday. We can't control the past. It's gone. Everything that I've said so far with you today, it's happened forever. It exists in eternity, for infinity. It is there. And to hold yourself to the fire about those things forever is so dangerous, because if you do that, how will you ever get that place where you can let go what other people have done? Because if you can't forgive yourself, how can you forgive other people? Now, forgiveness does play a role. It's contextual. It varies person to person. There's a lot of things that have to go through in that. But I think ultimately it's can you sit down and be okay with the person you are, knowing that you're fallible, knowing that you've made a mistake, knowing that there's no such thing as perfection. Doesn't exist in this and another. Anywhere in the universe does perfect exist, except for the way that you choose to show up every day. Be the best version of you that you can today in the space of just simply being like, I'm probably going to screw something up. And instead of destroying yourself, recognize every single time you make a mistake, you learn. Like people are far more afraid of success than they are of failure. We fail all the time, but we beat ourselves up about it. But when we're successful, we don't pause and go, I did a great job today. Why? Because we're always so worried about the things of the past that we did that were wrong instead of the things of the present that we're doing that make us great.
Thank you so much for that reminder. That is so important. I also think another step in overcoming adversity and challenge and trauma is getting to a place of gratitude for the experiences that made you who you are today, and with the amazing things that you're doing and how all of those things have given you this direction where you're helping others to change their lives. Do you feel that? Do you have that perspective?
Yeah, look, that's a rocky road, right? Because when you're walking down that path, especially in the beginning, it's kind of like, why is this always happening to me? Why is the universe against me? Why does God hate me? Like, why am I the one that always has to go through these things? And that was me for a long time. And everyone, I will never take this away from anyone. If you've suffered trauma, if you've suffered abuse, which I get, I mean, I have an ACE score of 10. I've been through the ringer and back again. The more that we play the victim, the more that the victim reality exists for us, right? And I'm not saying, again, this is about culpability. You're not responsible for those bad things. But can you look at them and go, you know what? Maybe this happened for a reason. I know that's hard, right? Why would your mother cutting your finger off happen for a reason? Why would being a homeless child happen for a reason? I don't know. But I do know that if you can sit in it and go, how has this made me resilient? How has this made me powerful? How has this made me strong? How has this given me the ability to overcome circumstances that most people would never be able to fathom? How has this made me who I am today? And to be grateful for it, look, I'm a realist at the end of the day. That's the way that I look. I'm a positive realist. And so the way that I look at life is through this scope. Has anyone who has been through anything near like what I have been through been able to create a life that is happy, fulfilled, full of love, joy, compassion? The answer is yes. Then that means I can move towards that also. And now on the other side, if the question was, have anyone who's been through what I've been through had a totally, completely, utterly disastrous, destroyed life where they never get to love themselves, where they die with regret, and they burn down everything around them? Yes, that was the first 26 years of my life. So I've been on both sides of that coin. And ultimately, I think that you can just sit back and take inventory of all of it, right? I look at my ability now to serve, to be of service, to help now millions of people around the world who listen to the podcast or have read the books, the hundreds of thousands that I've coached. It's like, I couldn't do that without those things. I'd probably just be working in marketing still, or like washing cars. I have no idea. I don't even have a high school diploma. I can't really do a lot with my life, right? But it was like this thing here. I was like, wait a second. What if I can take my trauma and turn it to triumph? And you hear this all the time, turn your mess into your message. Like that's so true. And the willingness to do so, that doesn't mean you have to go and serve at this high level. That's not what it means at all. People get that conflated. They're like, oh yeah, I had this bad thing happen, so I need to go speak on stages. No, you don't. No, you don't. You need to do whatever is calling to your heart. That's what you need to do. And that's how you have to show up in the world, however it is that you choose to. Because so much about this thing about identity and bringing back and becoming whole is about recognizing, like, in its entirety, if you really break it down to the most simplified measure, healing, regardless of what's happened to you, is really about, can you show up in life on your terms and not on someone else's?
Mm.
And in that, to be grateful and to have joy and to bring happiness. And ultimately, it's a decision process. Like, what are you going to do today? What are you willing to do to have that life? Because you know this, there's sacrifice, there's pain, there is some suffering along in the journey. It is a yin and yang. You cannot have one without the other. You cannot have the rain without the sunshine. And if you can get okay with that, it's incredible what can happen to your life.
Michael, thank you so much. So many beautiful words of wisdom. If people want to connect with you after the show, how can they do that?
Yeah, the best way. We have a free community with hundreds of people in it. If you go to thinkunbrokenacademy.com, the podcast is there. A lot of the courses that I've taught are there for free. It's just at Think Unbroken Academy.
Thank you. So I really appreciate you being on the show today and sharing some really golden nuggets. For me, the takeaway is just take it day by day, right? I'm one of those people that's very hard on myself, feeling like I'm not ever doing enough and that I should be doing more, and not taking those moments of, just appreciate yourself and the good things that you're doing, and understanding that taking those little small steps can add up to big changes. And the other thing I really loved what you said today was following your heart, like following that little voice inside of you that I believe is guiding you towards your happiest life and the life that you really came here to lead. I don't believe we came here to be unhappy. I believe we are inherently happy, but the world pulls us away from that. And so it's always a matter of taking those steps that we need to reconnect to that inside of us. And so I that's another takeaway. So thank you so much for being on the show.
Yeah, it's an absolute honor, my friend. And thank you so much, because of this space. You're a part of my dream of ending generational trauma in my lifetime. And that means the world to me. So thank you.
I'm going to leave you with the thought for the day. Today's show was about healing from trauma to live happy. Remembering who and what we really are can help us to overcome the traumatic events in our lives. Understanding that we are not the bad things that have happened to us. We are not our trauma. We are not our mistakes. We are not our dis-ease. Some people identify themselves with their disorder saying, I'm depressed. You are not your depression, and the label does not define you. You may be feeling sad or depressed, but the true essence of who you are is whole and healed. The spiritual part of us was never broken, never damaged, and never hurt. Although our physical self went through the experience, our higher self was never touched. Our spiritual self is always there to love and nourish us and remind us of who we really are. Knowing this can help us to release the experience by focusing on what was learned from it and coming to a place of gratitude for how what happened to us helped us to grow and expand, which is what our soul came to earth to do. By becoming heroes of our own story, we are able to be empowered by the obstacles we were able to overcome, rather than be weakened or crushed by them. We are able to learn more about ourselves and the strengths and gifts within ourselves. We were able to discover by not allowing the trauma to define who we are. It's important that we seek out professionals that can help us to leave our trauma, rejection, mistakes, regret, and past behind us by incorporating practices that can help us to reconnect with the love, peace, and happiness that is always there at our core. Because for us to live a happy life, we must remove the blocks that are preventing us from being aligned with the wholeness and perfection that we really are. Thank you for joining me today on the Steps to Happiness show, and I look forward to being with you again next week.